That's, Jay, you've got a lot to cover in the last 10 minutes. Host the last 10 here.
Yeah, so recently we've been covering the history of these sort of deep state operations. One of the most famous of which I didn't realize actually how widespread it was, is Operation Gladio. Now, I know that's kind of a Cold War era thing that a lot of times people from the left utilize, but it's a great insight. It's a great window into how big religious institutions are co-opted. And Gladio was opted. And Gladio was part of that, right? That was this Cold War operation to have these stay-behind units in Europe. And it was done through coordination of the OSS, CIA, and organized crime throughout Europe. So these secret armies, by the way, they were not just there to, you know, sort of harass communists or something like that, which if that was all it was, okay, that makes sense. These were actually terrorist stay-behind units that were funded by black operation money, funded by the Vatican Bank, set up ultimately by people connected to James Jesus Angleton, Bill Donovan, all of those figures, William Colby. They were really involved in setting up this Gladio network. And if we think about the manipulation of dialectics here in terms of Cold War stuff, it helps us to understand dialectics and manipulation in our day. So, for example, Bill Donovan, when he was in the OSS, he went and trained Mao's guerrillas to fight and set up the Maoist intelligence network. Now, wait a minute. I thought that we were against that. No. If you understand that there's a higher level game that's played, David Rockefeller writes two New York Times editorials from a China traveler where he explains that he was amazed at the success of Mao's operation, Mao's collectivism in China. Why would he be amazed? Why would a big, huge capitalist figure be so amazed and so happy with the success of Maoist communists? Is because it's a social control mechanism that's excellent for consolidating wealth and transferring it offshore.
And it killed 100 million people.
And it's a great eugenics operation to kill masses of the population. Same model in Russia, same model in World War II, where you get mass death. So that's one element, absolutely. But you have to understand that it wasn't really ultimately about preventing communism. It was about a different type of system being put into place that was also communistic. That's why Rockefeller, for example, after he studied under von Mises, he went and studied under Harold Lasky, the famous socialist. And when he came out of his academic time, when he went into doing intelligence work, set up his own private intelligence network for Standard Oil, he says, well, I learned that there's a great deal to be learned from both monopoly capital and from Fabian socialism. And so I wanted a synthesis. So he actually argues for this synthesis. That's why.
And that's really the policy today.
That's what
before Obama left office, he traveled the world saying that.
It is a kind of third way, right? That was popular under Blair and Bill Clinton mostly.
Well, they create something more hardcore to move the Overton window, then they want to have something that opposes it that's almost as bad, but it's a false choice.
Exactly. And so it's a synthesis, right? It's elements of the worst elements of monopoly capital, right? Not free market, not any of that. Monopoly capital, the worst elements of Eastern Soviet bloc communism melded together in a technocracy. So that's why a lot of people get confused. They're like, is it communism, socialism? Is it corporatism, fascism? It's all of those things together, right? And so there's an elite class that's above it. That's in Brave New World, where the elite class is not subject to the dictates of the lower strata, right? The world socialist controller, Mustafa Aman, he's not subject to what everybody else is subject to. But it's supposed to be an egalitarian society with a rigid hierarchy, right? So again, this all comes out of
ultimate class society claiming it's getting rid of class.
Yeah, it's a false egalitarianism. That's by design. Part of the gaslighting itself is to tell you that we're all equal, and well, the party boss is above us because, you know, he's the representation of the people, right? He's the new man of the people, right? Well, we're going to the exact same thing in the New World Order. When they have this all in place, there will be the elite class, the sort of the new feudal class that's not subject to the rules of everyone else. Everyone else will be subjugated and in their lockdown, you know, coon pod smart cities. And the rest of the U.S. will be a Rewilding project, this kind of a thing. You've talked about that for many years, the UN Rewilding project. That's part of this.
And that's where the globalists are going to live.
Right.
We'll be in 5G prison pain induction centers.
Absolutely. So the key here is understanding that the Cold War, in my view, my opinion, set the stage for the last 20 years of the war on terror, which gave way to the war on this amorphous enemy of viruses. And
that's where I was going. First, they get rid of our rights to fight Nazis they created, then communists they created, then it's the Muslims, and then now it's the American people, and all of us are incubators for viruses. We're now all the enemy.
Yeah, they call it biosecurity. The new in the white papers and the documents which have come out, the British Ministry of Defense in the last few years, NATO PSYOP document that came out a couple of years ago. All these documents talk about the future warfare is not some nation state, it's not some rogue state, it's people that have what the NATO document calls thinking that doesn't fit into accepted norms. So you're now the problem if you don't submit to this stuff. And they actually talk about that the warfare that will be conducted will be a transhumanist warfare. That's in the NATO PSYOP document, right? The British Ministry of Defense document says that we're going to have to combat the people that don't want to take microchips or nanotech chips. That's the new enemy is that, because the justification, the auspices are biosecurity. If you're not vaccinated, if you don't have or whatever they're going to do.
Well, Harari says if we don't take your body over the nanotech, we can't surveil you 24 hours a day.
Right, and that's why you're a security threat. You're a walking sort of,
When they're the ones actually running the labs, releasing the viruses.
Exactly.
Just like they create the communists, now we can take your rights, fight the communists. They create the virus, we get back to the same thing. And I know we've repeated that, but the formula is pretty simple when you pull back and you see they control the capital and from every angle they're hitting. Once you recognize everything they're pushing is pure death and pull back from it, then you suddenly, it's like those hidden pictures you see on the wall. It might be of a lion, might be of the world, might be of a parrot. And you can't see it for like 5 minutes until you finally see it. You can't unsee it.